Welcome everybody, this is General Microsoft 365 Development Special Interest Group, and this is bi-weekly sync. It is April 13th, 2020. And today we have actually quite a lot of items in our agenda. We've been kind of debating on should we move to a 2 demos per session mode or have three demos in a session, but it really depends on how long the demos are taking. So hopefully we can do the intro section or the latest updates on the open source projects in 15 minutes, and then that means leaves 15, or maybe slightly less, and we'll have Q&A time in the end as well. But let's actually jump right into it. Before we go to the updates on the open source projects, just to quickly recap, you have opportunities to participate on the community. We do welcome community demos. So if you have built something which is cool, or you have created a cool looking intranet, or which your employees or manager is allowing you to demonstrate or something like that, those are super cool things to show. And so reach out, volunteer for a demo, and we'll schedule you on a spot. You can definitely contribute in GitHub. There's multiple different open source projects which we are executing, and you can contribute samples. And the most important thing, provide feedback. If you don't like something, tell us what's wrong, and then we try to fix that for you. So we as a Microsoft, we are here for you, so that we provide the capabilities which you need based on your input. So please remember, don't just talk by yourself that something is missing. Let us know. That's super important. Now, provide on feedback. Always remember the fact as well that when we're executing open source projects, it is a good thing to provide positive feedback every now and then. So I need to explicitly go, like somebody added in the SP Dev Docs issue list or in the docs of Microsoft.com, a comment where they actually mentioned, hey, so Office 365 CLI, this is awesome. Thank you for everybody. And internally in the PnP team, that actually circled around and made a lot of people smiles, because it is so rare that people are receiving positive feedback. So thank you for those who are providing that. I think especially in this situation in the world, it's super important that we're trying to be positive and providing positive feedback for the people as well. Now, moving on things, quick set of things. We have video channel where we kind of have the recording of this session will be there in 24 hours. We have a lot of open source stuff. We are shuffling some of the repos between the organizations, and that's still slightly in progress. I just need to finalize that, or we need to finalize that. SharePoint Framework is our main extensibility model, but obviously you can build a lot of other stuff in SharePoint and in Office 365 or Microsoft 365 as well. We have SharePoint Framework sample galleries and issue list as well. I'm not going to spend too much time on that slide anymore, but please take a screenshot or take the URLs and check them out if you're interested on any of the additional information. Quick reminder also on our recurrent reminder, so to say, if you're looking into contributing, on getting started on contributing in a GitHub or with the documents, which we'll go through later today as an example in the context of Microsoft 365 Community Docs. We do have a KMS Sharing is Caring initiative run by David Warner and Hugo Bernier, where they actually help people to learn how to contribute in GitHub, how to do an edits on the existing docs.microsoft.com docs, and how do you contribute potentially as samples. And there's multiple different sessions available, which they schedule to have this kind of not one-to-one maybe experience, but still an experience to helping you in the live within a session. Now, a few other updates before we go to the updates on the latest projects. The new SharePoint Online Management Shell went live earlier today, just letting everybody know. There wasn't actually new commandlets in this one, but there are new properties and attributes and some of the existing commandlets. And now you might be like, hey, what are the changes? Do we have a change list? And the answer is unfortunately, no, we do not have explicit change list available, but it is a typical monthly release to make sure that it's running the latest bits, and then we'll update again in May as well. Now, some other new stuff in the Microsoft 365 area. There is a great blog series written mainly by MVPs, which is a lab around Microsoft Graph Toolkit. So at least at least Hugo written here and Fabio have written a few articles on this one. So please have a look on this one. If you go https AKMS M365 Dev blog, you'll find this one. There's I think the 5th day or 6th day is going live today. There's one more coming after that one. So it's kind of a 7-day or 6-day series. Super cool stuff on using the Microsoft Graph Toolkit. Now let's move to the PnP CSOM Core. Quickly go through what has happened in here. And Bert, I saw you in the call. I think you're ready to go.
So coming up for the PnP CSOM Core library, so our most used library, hitting way above 30,000 tenants a month using this library. So the next release will be on May timeframe, most likely May 9th, or that's the Friday or the Monday after. And for this release, it will be mainly merging of existing PRs, so small changes, small fixes here and there. And the reason why is because we are really working very hard to be able to provide you a first preview of our new Microsoft Graph First library. That one is targeted for early May as well, with and it's not really targeting end users as such, but more targeting contributors, testers, folks that want to get early access, play around with the library, provide feedback, and contribute. So that's then the H1 topic. Another H1 topic still is shipping V4 or PnP Core and PowerShell as well, assuming we'll have .NET Standard CSOM at that point. If that will move, then this one will move as well.
Just an explanation, H1 means from January to June. So by end of June,
yes.
These are right now planned to get live. So.
Yep, current plans.
So the April 10 release is still the latest on PnP PowerShell, and the next PowerShell is going to go live on May 9th as well at
May
the same
9th
time.
as well, yeah.
Together with Bert. Bert is leading basically the site's core, and then Roman is going to push out the latest version of PowerShell as well. Really, the main thing here is the Connect PnP Online. There is so many options with that PowerShell commandlet, so there is an ongoing refactoring planned on that one. So, and it's the one which enables you to connect, for example, using app only, and certificates and multiple different other things as well. So making it more easily approachable.
And maybe also just highlight one commandlet, initialize PnP PowerShell authentication commandlet. I think it was shown last time I was on vacation, but that's a really cool commandlet if you want to set up a certificate in Azure AD to authenticate the SharePoint, for example, or the Graph or whatever. So super cool commandlet doing it.
Yep.
Makes it
and
really
we even
easy.
have a video on that one on the which went live I think yesterday in the YouTube channel. Okay. Now I think we're falling back, Bert, on your topics.
Yes.
And Bert on the modernization.
Again, May 2020 release around middle of May. Page transformation is fairly complete, meaning there's not so many. There is some small asks here and there, but nothing major, nothing big. So this one will be more like bug fixes. Long-term future H1, maybe even H2. H1 will be more the assessing and investigating, can we support other input sources besides SharePoint, classic SharePoint pages? And then development of that one will be mainly H2, so I don't think we will pull it off for H1. But that's about page transformation. The other, and by just for folks that I always tend to forget this, with page transformation is a technology that enables you to just take any old SharePoint page, wiki web page, publishing page, Delaware blog page, classic blog page, and create a modern page from it. So that's what that does. The other, besides page transformation, the other component is the scanner, which we use to assess your environment. If you want to modernize, the scanner will give you the data to help you modernize. And for that one, there will be a 2.11 release middle of May, with a bug fix for folks that use the scanner with low permissions, being sites read all. We hit into like a list field threshold issue when querying a list in tenant admin, so that's being fixed. And there will be a new API, and I hope it's in the CSOM version that you ship, Vesa. I don't know, I didn't check yet, but there will be at least, if not now, then in the future, there will be an API in CSOM and REST, which you can call to check whether your homepage will be modernized if we roll out the homepage modernization. So this is the Can Modernize Homepage API. Good, I think that sums it up for modernization.
And let's move then to the yoTeams. So Victor, I saw you on the call. There was some debates. Can actually make it,
could
but
join.
You are there. Excellent.
Perfect. So what we did since the last few weeks is, apart from releasing 2.13, we actually created a tutorial with that new feature, which is Teams tabs SSOs, what we also demoed in another call a couple of weeks ago. So please take a look at that one to get some all the details on how to set up those Teams tabs things. And you need to do some Azure AD configuring to get that to properly work. And also, I just looked at the statistics a couple of hours ago, and last week we had close to 500 new Teams applications being scaffolded, which is really cool. So it's growing week by week right now. What we're looking into at the moment is, of course, upgrading the NPM packages, and specifically the Fluent UI to the React-North Star, which is the future of Fluent UI and Office UI Fabric, or whatever the name's going to be. So that's something we're experimenting with. But most importantly, I would say that we are experimenting also with the new build pipeline. Recompilations has been quite slow if you have bigger project, or specifically with the React components, etc., and takes about 15 to 30 seconds to recompile. But now we're down to half a second or a second, and even faster sometimes. So that's a big thing. And also we are moving over to ESLint as standard instead of using TSLint, which is now deprecated. Thanks.
That's it for this one. So thank you, Victor. It's really cool to see that it's 500 scaffolds in just last week. So it is clearly growing. So the interest on the Teams development is definitely growing. So great job on that. And for in 2 weeks, there will be a specific demos again on yoTeams. So just a teaser on our plans for the future. Now, but for today, we have 3 demos coming up. We are actually right on the schedule, which is great. We'll start with the Chris Kent, potentially something related on war horses, just sticking with the theme. And then after that, really cool setup with Teresa. She's going to talk about how does IBERIABANK is using SharePoint Online during the COVID-19 situation. And then Mark D. Anderson is doing an introduction on the Microsoft 365 Community Docs. And this is a really nice, cool new initiative under the PnP umbrella as well. But Chris, I think you're ready to go. Take it away.
Good. Let's talk about stuff. Boom. Okay. All right. So we're on our classic Warrior Horses site. And as we know, the Warrior Horses love to use formatting to make things a lot better. And with that, they're very excited about a couple of new features. We saw it a couple of weeks ago. Saw some of the new hover card things. And I wanted to flesh that out a little bit and show a few of the options and show you some of the things you can do with it, the ways you might combine those, and highlight several of our samples for you. So first, what am I talking about? So if we take a look at something like, say, our agents list. All right, we come over here to the agents list, and let's zoom that a bit. All right, whoa, some good zoom in. Okay, so we've got, our standard list. We've got lots of formats on here. Over here, we just have our handler list. It's just a single person field, right? So if we're on here right now, because there's no formatting applied, right, we get this nice hover card effect. It's awesome. It's kind of out of the box. It just works. Now, that's great. And one of the reasons we never applied formatting right is because when we format this column, come over here so we can see it with advanced mode. If we do anything really, right? So we just, in this case, we're going to say it's a div, right? And then we're going to say our text content is going to be our, it's going to equal our @current field, right? And then we're going to add an exclamation point. That sounds exciting, right? And then we got to close that out. Okay. If I preview that, right? No, not current field. Current field dot title. Got a person field here. Ha. There we go. Right. So we've just done this. It's a very basic format. It's not great. You'll notice we suddenly lose all that extra functionality. We just wanted to add an exclamation point. It's no good. Maybe we went over here to our formatting repo. Right. Went to our column samples. And we come down here to like a person field, right? So we've got our person, let's see, round image format, right? So we're just going to grab that directly out of GitHub. I'm going to grab that. I'm just going to copy that. If I come back here and I just apply that one, right, even cooler, right? I'm doing something pretty neat here. And I've got a little title that shows it, but I've lost all of that hover card functionality, which is really, really lame. You know, and so at some point you may decide maybe this isn't worth it, right? Although it looks cool, it's better than just the text that we had before. If I don't have all the details to contact them and, you know, documents they've been working on, I don't really want it. Well, as we saw last week, we can quickly edit that. So if we come over here, we can just add a little something here. I'm just going to copy. Let's see, what do I got? So I grab me this just so I can have an updated version of that so we don't show them when they're not supposed to. All right, so if we grab that, all we have to do is add this nice new property, or I could say default hover field. And in this case, I might just specify what field I want. Because I want a person field, I can just say at current field. All right, and that's all I have to do. When I preview that, now I've got all that functionality back, which is awesome, right? So now I can apply these, you know, really complicated formats. I can do all sorts of stuff. I can conditionally show this, right, if I want to do something different besides just showing the picture. But I don't sacrifice all of the awesome out-of-the-box, you know, default hover card formats. So that's really, really cool. So we definitely like that. All right, so let's take a look here. What else can we do with that, right? Can we go a little further? Sure. Right, we don't have to specify the current field. We can do things like, you know, conditionally show who you wanted there, right? If we wanted to show the author, right, we can reference the author field instead, right? So that's the created by. Let's preview that. We'll see. All right, well, the author, oh, I didn't preview. Let's preview that again. Well, maybe they're the same person in this case. But this is how you reference other fields, right? So if you want to get a hover field from somewhere else or you want to conditionally do that, this supports conditional expressions here. So if you wanted to check to say, like, you know, if the person's status, right, if it contains the word dead, right, then show the creator or whatever else you want to do. So the whole idea is you can get a little creative as long as you're specifying the field. That's the key with this one. This is the name of the field you want to do this default hover field with. Okay? So we can go a little further even with that. So let's say we're over on our, let's go over here to our things list, right? So that's cool, but what about where we've got this kind of face pile? We've shown this before. This is one of our more complicated formats because it's using an iterator with the for each, right? Can we get that same functionality here? Well, if we come in here and we go to column settings and we format this column, again, we'll scoot that over a bit. All right, you can see, and again, we've got a whole video series just on this one, not a video, just a video dedicated to this, which explains the for each and everything else. So I'm going to skip some of that, but the whole idea with the for each is you create these iterators, right? And these iterators allow us to draw individual pieces here. So if we want to display, display a hover card, we can do that. So if we come over here to our multi-person face pile, we can add in our image here, we'll just add it to this element here. So it doesn't have to be the root element. It could be a sub element. All right, so we'll just add it here. We're going to do that same thing, default hover field. But in this case, instead of specifying an actual field, we're going to specify it using that iterator logic. So we're going to say person iterator. And again, this is a little more advanced scenario, but I just want to show that it works here. So preview that. But now we start to see, even though we've got two different people fields, right? Now we can see the hover cards for each of them, which is awesome. So you're not limited to just a single hover card here. You can have multiple hover cards in a single format, or you can imagine in view formatting. You might have multiple different people fields. You want to take advantage of these hover fields, right? So that's really, really cool. In fact, it's so cool, we'll save that. So now let's take a look. What else can we do? So we've got these default hover fields, which is great. And again, huge leg up from what we used to have. But what about if we want to do some kind of custom thing, right? So let's head over here where we can, not there, let's go over here. We've just got a nice kind of clean area-ish, right? And we're just going to grab this random field because it doesn't matter what's in it to us, right? And we're just going to see if we can apply some custom formats here. So we're going to say, we're going to just grab ourselves, right, an Elm type. And we're going to say that's a div. And then we're going to say, attributes. Let's make this thing an icon, right? So this is, and they don't have horse icons, so I go to my next best one, which is the cat, which I certainly like, right? And in this case, that's all we're going to do, right? We just want a cat. We're going to preview that. And we have a little cat. That's great. Let's, change it around just a little bit by adding an MS. Here, I'll just copy this class over here. I'm going to add a color and a size to this just with our class attribute here. I don't want to type that in front of you. We'll add a comma. Preview that. All right, so now we've got a nice little cat. And that's cool, but if we want to do something a little extra, right? We don't just want to apply a hover card, which we could. We could apply that default hover card. Instead, we have this other option, which is custom card props. All right, so custom card props has a bunch of sub-properties. And there are two that are required. The first one is the open on event. So you have to supply this, and it has to either be click or hover, all lowercase. So in this case, we'll do click. All right, so we'll say click. And then the other required property is formatter. All right, so this is just more formats. So formatter can be anything you want in here. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to say an Elm type, right, of a div, and we could have all sorts of nested children and all sorts of other things. So in this case, we're going to, add more attributes here. I'm just going to copy some of these things so we don't have to type all that in front of you. Okay, in this case, I'm going to add my attributes as another cat. We're going to make him yellow, right? We're going to make him extra big. Very exciting. And then we're going to fix my format. What are we missing? Yeah, I got to close out the formatter. And I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to just grab this whole thing because I typed it wrong. There you go. Let's preview that. So now we have this click idea, right? Ooh, I have a cat, a larger cat showing up there. So a couple things we notice is it's way over here to the right. Right? How can we fix that? What are some of our options for us? So we do have several options. The first thing we could do is by default, because it's a div, right? It's taking up the whole space of that column. So we could, be a little more specific. We could add, a style of, say, 24 pixels or something like that. Let's just add that here. All right, we'll just add that in. So now it's going to be width of 24 pixels. And because we're doing a click event, I like to put the cursor to a pointer. I think that's kind of important. All right, so let's preview that. I've got a pointer. Right, now it's right next to it, so that's cool. What if I wanted to make it look a little different? Like, I don't want it to the right. I want it down below. So that's kind of the default position it goes to. But we've got a couple other options. So in our custom card props, we can also add this directional hint. Right, and by default, the value is right center. But there's a lot of other values, right? So we could say bottom center, for instance. All right, so let's try that. Add our comma. We preview that. Now when we click on it, it shows up below. All right, so it's centered on our object, right? So again, it's good that we specified a width here, so the center actually looks correct. And it comes down there. Now there is another piece here, and there's about 14 different directional hints, and we'll go over those in a minute, what all those are. But we can add this beak. So I like that it's called a beak. Is beak visible? All right, and this is just a true or false. So in this case, by default, it's obviously not there. We preview it. Bam, look at that. We got a little beak. Woo! That's exciting. So the beak really just means pointy triangle. Makes it obvious what the thing is attached to. Right? A couple things with the beak. You can't specify that gap size. So if you're used to this UI Fabric callout element, there is a gap size. It's 8 pixels, and it is not customizable right now. And you also, if you set like an MSBG color, let's say magenta, that sounds exciting. So I'm setting a background color, right? You'll notice the beak stays white. So the beak color is also not customizable. So just keep some of those things in mind, right, as you're working through some of this. But that's pretty cool still, right? So I can set all these directional hints. I can do all sorts of cool stuff. I can combine these as I needed to, right? So if I wanted to, even in here, for whatever reason, if I wanted to say default hover field, right, in this case, I'm going to say is the author field, right, just because this is not a person field. Let's preview that. Now if I click it, oh, it's actually showing down there, but let me click a higher one here. I got my screen so big. There we go. I can actually combine the two different types of hover cards, right? And I can go a little crazy with it. And in fact, you can combine your own custom cards quite a bit as well. So here I'm just going to grab one so we don't have to watch me type all of this. All right, so if I were to bring that over a little bit, let's preview that. Now I've got my cat, right? I click it, I got another cat, I got another cat, I got another cat. right? I can go crazy with this. So you can go all sorts of places with these different kind of custom card props here. And again, note that the directional hint is just a hint. That is a keyword there, right? You can see I've set it here to be on top center. But if I'm on, say, this one, all right, we'll see if we run out of room. Because we ran out of room, it's going to automatically position itself and move it over to the right. So they are hints, and they're a good way to go. But just keep in mind it's not a guarantee. All right? So cool. So now let's see maybe a practical use case for some of this. All right. Let's head over to our Warrior Horses site. And in the past, we've shown off on our document library, right? We created this preview field here. And all we've done is we've taken a simple column. Let's see, there it is applied. And this is, if we format this column, we'll see this is actually our sample that's available here on our sample repo. That's just called our file thumbnail sample. But we can go a little bit, that's nice, that's cool. We can see a little preview of the document, right? All sorts of, there's like 270, whatever it is, document types that will preview. And that's cool, but what if we used our custom callout to do a little more with that, right? So let me pull this up here. All right, so let's grab this and let's say custom card props on this guy. All right, so we're just going to add our custom card props. We're going to say open on event. In this case, we're going to say hover. All right, we're going to say a directional hint. Bottom center, because we want to show it underneath. All right. And then in this case, we're just going to add our formatter. Now, I can add an image here directly, but you'll notice if I add the image directly, sometimes the previews take a little longer to load. They don't load immediately. They load after the pages. So I'm going to do a nested div. And for that, I'm just going to copy this because, again, watching me type is fun. But I'll explain what I've done here. All right. So you'll notice up here we're using our keyword @thumbnail_medium, and we could certainly do an @thumbnail_large. But one of the things it also allows you to do is you can specify maximum sizes, maximum widths and heights. So I'm saying, give me a 500 by 500 image, right, or up to. It's not going to distort it. And put that inside a div that's already 500 pixels, because again, that way it positions correctly. So if we preview that, come on now, there we go. So let's come back down here. So now we can start to see we have a nice light box effect. Maybe that one doesn't want to load. All right, so we've got our sample PowerPoint. All right, text. We've got a Word document, and we can go all sorts of different directions with this, right? So you can imagine maybe we show the details of the preview, but we show some of the other properties of the file as well, right? We kind of list those out, and it becomes a lot better, right? It's a lot better than just a. I've got some problems with my thumbnails loading. Let's just save and reload that. But it becomes a lot more useful and a lot more functional than just a simple tiny little icon, right? By adding these hover cards, we finally have some more interactive type pieces, right? So Lightbox was one of the original requests. A lot of people want to be able to do light boxes, and now you can, supposedly. Now, all right, so real quick, I think I'm running out of my time here. Let's wrap it up here. So default hover field. So when you do this, you're specifying the field, right? So you grab a column reference. So if you're grabbing a person field, you don't need to specify any sub-properties like you might, because you're just specifying the field. You can add all sorts of conditions in there to make these things as dynamic as you want. And again, we showed that example of an iterator for multi-choice fields. So you can do that and do some pretty awesome stuff. Now, if you specify on the same element both the default hover field and the custom card props will win. So just keep it in mind. If you want to do something where you're kind of combining those out, you can. We'll skip that example. Just use a div that has some children, and then apply the different hover cards or your custom card props to the children elements, not the parent element itself. All right, that's this. And now custom card props. So again, open on event is required, and your formatter is required. You can do click or hover. These are all the directional hints. So they're pretty much the same, right? So they're going to line up, so bottom, center, left edge, or right edge, right? So that's going to line up on the line or on the other line. With the bottoms and the tops, you got these auto edges as well, where you're saying, I don't care which edge, you pick it based on the size that's available. So there's a lot of options here. Experiment with those, but remember, it is a hint. And so things will position themselves correctly. And you'll notice even as things were changing, like size-wise, as images loaded in, you saw that it picked a different hint as needed. So it's pretty robust in that way. All right, and of course, ISBeak visible adds that nice little triangle, which I think is especially helpful. When it's not quite obvious which item you're looking at, if you've got a fairly complex custom card. All right, finally, a couple of resources for you. All of these samples will be updated here. They're already updated. I'm just going to push it. To have examples of all of that, the last two are a little more detailed. We got custom hover cards and the default hover cards. This is some of what was presented a couple of weeks ago. But check those out. It's awesome what you can do now. You can take your format so much further with these. Very exciting stuff. And that's all I got. Woo!
Excellent. Thank you, Chris. Really awesome stuff and exciting stuff. It's great to see this level of a no-code capabilities within the list, and so really cool stuff. But I think it's time to move forward. So Teresa, I noticed that you're already a presenter. I think we're good to go. It's all ready to go. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So I work for a regional bank. We're based in Louisiana, and with the COVID-19, when it first came out, I was asked to build a SharePoint site to house the information basically for associates. So, what happens, obviously we're a bank and people can't come into the bank anymore. So, and do people work from home? Do they go into the office? So first we started out at the beginning of March with this site. And it was pretty basic, just some pretty graphics here. And then they asked for, these are the 3 original pages that they asked for. And then we had a graphic that was very static and just linked to the latest announcement. And so just kind of after a couple of weeks, I took that out because I had announcements set up using the news posts. And it was just, every time I would add one, this made it dynamic. And so you could see what the latest one was instead of just a graphic that you had to click on. So when I first got the requirements, it was pretty much create these 3 pages and add this little bit of text. There was nothing about navigation. So after the first review of, okay, this has what they want, then I went back and added navigation, which turned out to be a big hit. So this is pretty much almost all built without any code. There is one piece of code that I was inspired to find. Chris inspires me. And so this actually links to a podcast, and we actually have had 3 different versions of that. So that was at the beginning of March. Then at the beginning of April, when the Paycheck Protection Program came out, we suddenly had all kinds of documents that we had to share with the bankers so that they could help clients process their loans, apply for and process the loans. And so that's where some of this SBA 7A CARES came in. And we built a couple of different pages and libraries. And so we built this library with all the forms, and this is just a mock-up of it. So it's actually got 6 categories. But one thing that was really important, actually the 2 most important things probably, are this had to have an audience for either client-facing or internal. At first, someone went in and put at the end of each file name, they put _internal, _client facing. And to me, that wasn't very clear, and you certainly couldn't group or sort by it. So I went and created the audience, and then we went back to just some regular file names. Now, the other thing that was very important was being able to open any of these files in a separate window. So we would notice that we got it to where some Word and PowerPoint files and Excel would open up in a different windows, but the PDFs would not, or vice versa. So we finally, I reached out to someone who does write code, because I don't. And we found this code that I will show you. This is the same library. And what we did is we went to format the name column. And all this does is basically right here, it tells it to use the URL plus the web equals 1 so that it will open up in a separate tab. And again, took a couple hours for me to get that done because a couple of people were helping me with it, but we got it. And so now they don't care that it shows up blue. As long when they click on it, it will open up in a separate tab. So that was, like I said, those were the major things, is having, like, being able to group by the audience. I actually have a sort order here that you obviously don't see the column because these files have to be in a certain order. So this piece of code right here is the only code in this entire site. And some of the cool features that we use is these are quick links. So this is one place where we're using quick links. There are like at least 3 different places where we're using quick links, and they look very different, but it's all the same web part. So I think that showcases the flexibility of SharePoint Online. And so here's one, and these actually, if you click on it, it would open up Outlook with an email with the title, the subject already being whatever you see here, so program information eligibility, and it has the email address already. So we wanted to make sure that when someone sent an email, we knew, because it's all actually going to the same email address, so we needed the subject to automatically apply. And then, we have, this is another place where we're using quick links. So this right here, these are quick links. And these, some of them have really long file names. So I had to go in and I was able to upload the files, but then actually edit the title that we're using in the web part. So if I click on this one, right now this is the same, but I told them, like, okay, there's 110 character limit. So I had them come up with something that was short enough to fit in here. So that was something where they didn't have to change the actual file name. We were able to just change how it looks on here. And it was very important that these files all be internal use only, that we let them know for certain that this is internal use only. And I told them that I could definitely make that obvious. And so I used this gray background for the section to kind of make everything stand out, and then my big red letters here. And so this is just a text section up here and text at the bottom. Making good use of the dividers is one of the newer web parts. And then on here, you don't see it, but there's actually a spacer here because I wanted to move this down a little bit. Okay. And so this was actually our first company-wide SharePoint Online site. We are primarily SharePoint 2016, but we wanted this to be able to be available to everyone without crashing our SharePoint on-prem farm. And we thought that was a good way to roll everything out. There's no PII, and so there's we don't have any security issues with this. So we used SharePoint for it. So this nCino support, this is a library, and the original request was for a page in SharePoint for online portal support. And I went back to him and then said, no, you're not getting a page called online portal support. What do you know? Tell me what you really need. I need a more specific name as well. And so that library has 3 Excel documents in it, and those Excel documents get updated every couple of hours, every day, 7 days a week. So I finally got tired of them emailing me the files, and then I had to go delete the ones that were there and upload them. And plus on Sunday, they were mad that I was still sleeping at 9 a.m. So what I did was I went in and I created this flow in Power Automate, and it basically says, okay, when a new email arrives, and I had them put a certain subject and just called it nCino reports, and that way it's looking for, through my emails, looking for nCino reports, and it gets the current files that are Excel files. It deletes the current Excel files. It's fortunate that there are only 3 Excel files in this library, and they all get replaced. And then here I'm just adding the names of the files to the new attachments so that at the end I can send them an email saying which files were uploaded. So basically it deletes the 3 that are there, and then here it uploads the new 3. And so like I woke up this morning and, oh look, half an hour before I woke up, the files were updated for today, for the first round for today. So that's been nice, not having to watch my email from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. or whatever the latest they've given me stuff. So this has been a really useful for me. And yesterday it did fail because one of the Excel files had gotten locked, and then I didn't have a chance to even look into it because I was working on something else. But eventually that file that was locked became unlocked, and in the afternoon when that flow ran, it was able to delete the file that had previously been locked. And everything is back to normal. This is another FAQ. So here originally we started out using the page anchors. And I had a question at the top, and you could click on it and it would jump down to the question with the answer. And then there were just too many. It was just a bunch of text. It was really hard to read. So then they decided they wanted to have just sections and just jump to the different sections. But again, just having text of the different section names at the top was still pretty ugly. Not really, to me, it wasn't very understandable, especially if you're new and new to SharePoint. So then I thought about how we're using quick links on another page and decided, hey, I can use the same kind of formatting where it fills the kind of a button and it fills the whole button. And so now I can click on loan booking and funding, and it takes me down there. And then I put links to go back to the top. So I can click on top and it'll take me, right here it's only taking me almost to the top. This is the link that it's actually supposed to take me to. But in our actual production environment, it works just fine. It goes all the way to the top. So it's been pretty nice being able to just see what all the different sections are on the left, sort of a table of contents, and then being able to jump down and jump back up. And then tips for working remotely was just something that I had been seeing a lot on Twitter when people first started working from home. I saw a lot of tips from different places. So we actually sent out some best practices internally. And then on our production side, I have a lot more built out with tips from Herman Miller about, working ergonomically. And I even put a video, a 15-minute meditation video from Adrienne, who does she has a big yoga series on YouTube. So I just put some fun things out there to help people. And then also a lot of people that are working from home are dealing with having their children at home as well. So I went out and I found, mostly through Twitter again, some resources. And these are actual individual link web parts. I actually had not used that before. So when I did use one, I was really surprised when I saw that it pulled in the picture and sort of the headline here and part of the description. There is an option to have the link itself above where the picture is. I didn't find that to be all that useful, especially since the links are listed here. So I deleted that, but you can have it, and I have it on something else that I can show you. So that is actually going to be on our, not that resource site, this one. So here it does have the direct links. And so they wanted links to coronavirus as well as the flu. And then I put links to WHO and the CDC main sites. Just if people wanted to go out there, they would have, instead of having to Google it or memorize the URL, they could just quickly go there. So again, that was one of our original pages that they requested. They also really wanted to have this video about hand washing, and then this video about cover your coughs and sneezes. These came from YouTube. So I was like, great, we can use the YouTube web part. And they love that it just plays on the page. I found this on the CDC website, this PDF file. So I just put it in here as a file viewer web part. And I really love that when you go to the file viewer web part, you can upload the document right there. You don't have to actually upload it to the document library first. And then something that was just unique to us was that financial institutions are critical or essential businesses. So we actually have a form, like if we got pulled over or something, we could say, hey, I really am essential. And then I have under tips for families, there's family activity times. And all of these images, I used the web search to find, and people have been really loving the images. I think that it adds a lot to the pages and kind of gets people interested more so than just some text. And then a friend of mine created this isolation checklist for her kids. So I added that out here. So overall, this is just a SharePoint Online out of the box, except for that one name column that we're using column formatting. And on when the Paycheck Protection Program started, we had 17,432 visits to the site that day, in one day, and we only have about 3,800 employees. So that tells you how often people are going to this site, because the resources are just so valuable. All this information is at their fingertips, and it's just been a huge hit internally. So now as we go forward, anything new that we can, we're putting into SharePoint Online. And that's been kind of our adoption driver. Not that we officially rolled out SharePoint Online, but when we do, it's going to be like, oh yeah, you remember how great this, coronavirus site was? Well, this is just going to be the same.
That's really cool, Teresa. Really, really cool. I have to also say, I really love the URL of your tenant. Anything code. So, but yeah, so really, really cool stuff. This is really nice to see, and it's great demos on showing other companies and people what you can build with modern SharePoint and different kind of modern SharePoint portals, because portals is a big thing personally. Mm-hmm. And like you said, even though your company hasn't truly adapted the cloud, and this will definitely help on then gradually transition them, because I'm pretty sure that they start asking on, hey, what about in my team site? Can I start using these kind of things and capabilities and all of that? And then that drives adoption of cloud as well.
Yeah, and we just rolled out Microsoft Teams. I say rolled out. We gave it to them and haven't done anything other than one very brief email that says, hey, you have Teams.
Yeah.
But so we're starting to use that as well.
Absolutely. But like I said, and also like Kim noted actually on the chat when you were presenting that that this is really nice to see what other people are using, and we absolutely welcome these kind of demos as well, because this is super useful for everybody to understand what's possible. Also, I like the Power Automate part. You probably shouldn't even tell your manager that you're automating your tasks, so then you have 30 minutes free time. So just kidding.
Yeah.
So.
There's only 3 people in the entire company that know that I'm automating.
There we go. So super busy doing all of this stuff. But yeah. Okay, anyway, so we still have roughly 10 minutes time. So we're slightly behind of the schedule, but I think it's fine. Thank you, Teresa, on this one. Mark, I think you are ready to go on your side. Just take it away.
All right, cool. So, following Chris and Teresa with talking about documents is a little tough. So, now we have the Microsoft 365 Community Docs walruses, because we got to have something, right? We got to have something that makes it a little more interesting. So the Microsoft Community Docs have been around for almost a year. It's taken us a little while to sort of get the engine running. And the idea is to have a place where people in the community who may not have a platform for themselves can publish content that's useful for the general community, but also sort of fill in the gaps, because I think there's a lot of great content for developers. There's a lot of great help for end users, but that big space in the middle, and I seem to always be finding spaces in the middle that need filling. That area where we have makers, citizen developers, site owners, site collection administrators who want to be able to use this platform optimally and want to read about the best ways to do that. That's what we're really focusing on. So we have a set of topics that we've sort of grouped things into so far. Come on, there we go. And some more walruses just to again liven it up. So we have things like basics and definitions, and I'll show you a few samples of what I'm talking about in each of these. Information architecture, a little bit about automation. Our audience here is not technical people. It's really that middle ground. So automation in the context of why is it good for you? How can you get things done? Maybe you talk to a developer about that. Some Microsoft 365 better practices. I stopped using the phrase best practices a long time ago because sometimes they're not best. They're just better than the alternative at a time. Making some better decisions. You know, if you have choice between 2 or 3 or 4 different ways of doing things, how should you evaluate those decisions and how can you choose best based on the information that's available for you? Some SharePoint better practices and some useful scenarios. Let's play out a scenario that someone has actually solved in the real world and show you how they've done that in that particular article. Now we've had some great contributions over the the last 9 to 12 months. I wanted to call out all of the people who are sort of part of this first wave. Those community contributors there have each contributed at least an article or a significant change to an article that already exists. So if you'd like to see your name in that list on one of these calls, this is an opportunity for you to start to contribute to the community, maybe in a different way than you have before, maybe in a way that you hadn't thought of before. And then we have some, I wanted to come up with a good name for them, Microsoft Heroes. We'll call them the heroes. They all wear capes. Joanne Hendrickson is helping us sort of with the mechanics of managing the repo and making sure that things go live and things like that. Pam Green and Tom Reesing in the Docs group have been a great help sort of socializing this inside Microsoft and helping us get some traction because we're actually publishing these articles in docs.microsoft.com. And so, people are a little nervous about what we might write there, and so I think we can all continue to set examples of writing content that is of great value and also is correct and is vetted and all of that sort of stuff. Thomas Ray and David Strom sort of play a background role from the Microsoft side. They sort of keep that even the underpinnings of the engine running, and Vesa does some stuff, and I talked to him about some things. So he's obviously a great help in all of this. So I know we just have a couple of minutes. I'll just show briefly what we have. So this is the landing page for Microsoft 365 community content, and each of these is an article or a collection of articles that ought to prove useful for you. One of the things that I think we've been missing in this community for a very long time is just a glossary of what are the terms. And every time I think of a term that I haven't seen spelled out in a while, I add it to this list. And I think any of you who might have some suggestions could probably come up with some things too. Just what is this thing that we're talking about? And lots of times there's an acronym involved, so it can be confusing, and a lot of the time people don't even know what the acronym means. Anyone know what CAML stands for? Camel? Well, I happen to. So it's anything from that simple a piece of content, let's define a particular term, to some relatively complex things. Can machine learning be used to assign managed metadata attributes for items? Some really good thinking here from Beth Hall on how to sort of think through that process. And of course that will change a bit with Project Cortex. So the onus is on us to keep the repo up to date. So we have these cards on the front that are sort of the promos of things that we think will probably catch most people's attention. And then as you drill into those categories down here, you have even more options. So sitting behind this is GitHub. And if you click that edit button, you actually get to the edit page for this particular document. But this Microsoft 365 community repo is where all the magic happens. And if you're an article writer and you're not a techie and you see GitHub and think, oh, no, I can't do this. I've tried to, and we've tried to, write some articles here and some content that really help you step through the process. How do I get started? How do I think about contributing to this repo? This also is content that you could contribute to. So all of this is open source. All of it is community driven. Love to have more people involved. If you just have an idea, you can go in and put in an issue. There are several different kinds of issues. If you spot something wrong with an article, or you have just an article suggestion. I don't want to write something, but I have an idea, something that I've tried to look for that I haven't found. Daryl Miller from Microsoft asked a question on Twitter earlier today, which I turned into an issue here so that we can try and write something about it. So that's sort of the process. It's a very quick overview. I'm looking forward to seeing some of you show up and make contributions or comments on things. And if you have any questions, obviously you can also just come in here and ask a question in the repo or tweet it out or whatever. And those of us who are paying attention to the sort of stream of content out there will try and help you out. And Vesa, back to you.
Before you stop sharing, just one note when we're still watching and seeing the screen. So
yeah.
Some of you in the call might be thinking on, wait a minute, so why is customers and partners creating this kind of content rather than Microsoft technical writers actually writing this kind of content? And when you think of it, the answer is actually quite simple. Customers and partners are the ones who actually spend 24/7 on actually in these tools and create these solutions and create solutions on top of the things what we in Microsoft provide. It's not that the PMs and the technical writers in Microsoft come up with the most creative things, so they come up with the ways of utilizing the platform. It's actually the people who deliver these solutions on a day-to-day basis to customers. Well, not on 24/7, but still, except in the Teresa's case. But it's really around the fact that then when the story comes from the community, from the partners and customers, it's a based on real world experiences, not based on a person who sits in the office and has been told to write something related on X and Y and Z. That's why we want to do this. So it's actually real experiences around things. Anything you want to add there, actually, Mark?
No, but that's a great point. And I see this as it's not competition with Microsoft's docs. It's collaboration. It's partnership. We're like I said, we're trying to sort of fill in some gaps. We want to give that different flavor that Vesa is talking about. We do this stuff out here in the real world every day, and people who work at Microsoft just see it from a different perspective. So it's adding a different perspective into the mix and filling in some gaps. And I think that this is just ripe for a lot of opportunity for people to make contributions, large or small. And I really hope anyone on the call can think of some ideas and maybe jump in and offer them up.
Excellent. Thank you, Mark, for that one. I'm just going to finalize and close up with a few final slides. Like Mark said, we know that, for example, for the community docs, it will take a while for people to get used to this model, but it is there now that we start feeding the engine and getting your contribution, and also enabling people who are not necessarily the developers to contribute back on a community in a one centralized location where people can easily find the awesome text and story what you actually written. You can actually publish the articles which are in your blog post also in this location. That's definitely fine as well. Now, we don't have a time for Q&A. Unfortunately, this has been a really good chat on the chat, and hopefully everybody was pretty much getting the chat to work. We're working on with Teams organization that it would be more reliable. Recording will be available in the Microsoft 365 and SharePoint Community YouTube channel within 24 hours. The next M365 General Dev call is on May 14th, SharePoint Framework call 1 week from now, and then the monthly call is coming on the May 12th, where we actually this time also most likely have a non-dev topic. So we're kind of a position in the monthly call more generic and not just only on dev areas, but as a developer, it's good to know the basics and what's available and what is getting released, and then we can extend things as well. Now, final things, we have a lot of community calls. AKMS M365 dev calls is the list for all of the dev calls as well. And that's it from our side. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you for your input. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mark, for awesome demos again on this time. Like I said, recording will be on the YouTube channel within 24 hours. And have a great rest of the day and rest of the week, and stay safe. Bye-bye.